Good morning. Patricia Sylla was brought into this world in the City of Light. She was born of an Ivorian father and a French-American mother who had met while working at the French Embassy in Washington, D.C. At the age of 5, she was moved from France to the Ivory Coast. Pat is the middle sibling of 3 that are 5 years apart, the youngest being Aissatou and the oldest Karim, and she has an older brother, Alassane. Well, in the Ivory Coast, her brother was working as a middle school English teacher, and you can see here a class photo of Pat, perhaps teaching her classmates the art of the cold, hard stare. Pat was a little unsure what she wanted to do when she was younger, perhaps thinking about being a flight attendant, but then later gravitating towards the sciences. It was through a connection to the group from Médecins Sans Frontières who had come to do cleft palate repairs and for whom her family had been collecting supplies that she was first determined to become a head and neck reconstructive surgeon. Close, but seemingly wrong-ended, apparently. Pat attended French Lycée, to us high school, and then at the age of 18, when all of her friends were planning to pursue advanced education in France, very much against her will, her parents chose to send her to the United States for college, where she could be close to her grandmother, who would perhaps keep an eye on her and keep her out of trouble. She landed without a strong command of the English language, but eventually found herself at Georgetown studying pre-med, and then she went to Cornell for medical school, where she fell in love with New York City, and also with Paul, who would be her future husband. Have you ever seen a picture that could say more than 1,000 words? It was well on rotation at Mount Sinai Hospital that the colorectal bug bit Pat, and now she was determined to become a colorectal surgeon, but she also appreciated the benefit of laparoscopic and minimally invasive surgery. And during her residency at Columbia, Ken Ford, SAGE's icon, introduced her to the society which he helped found. Pat landed a SAGE's research grant and presented those findings at our annual meeting, and thus was born her connection to this society. Pat and Paul dated for 8 years before finally getting married during her 5th year of residency. And throughout their career development, they have made sure that they could stay in the same city together. So Pat pursued her colorectal fellowship at Mount Sinai to stay in city with New York. And then when Paul had the opportunity to go to Boston for a postdoc and cardiology fellowship, Pat successfully applied for a minimally invasive fellowship with David Ratner. And there she was introduced to the early years of excitement around notes and transanal surgery. And while she developed a research interest in the lab, she landed a NOSCAR grant in the ERCAD Traveling Fellowship. She later had the opportunity to join them on staff at the MGH. Throughout all of this, Pat tried to balance work and home life. And while she was developing the technique for transanal total mesorectal excision, she was introduced to Antonio Lacey, who later invited her to Barcelona, where she would go on to perform the world's first TA-TME, while she was pregnant with Jonah at 35 weeks. What could possibly go wrong? Obviously nothing. And this served as an important learning opportunity for Pat, because 3.5 years later, she persisted in chairing an ASCRS TA-TME training course while she was pregnant with Ariel at 37 weeks. Pat and her family enjoy their beach vacations, and they are here with her today. Paul in the front row here, Jonah's 14 and Ariel is now 10, and I'm sure they're brilliantly proud of their wife and mother. Something you might not know about Pat is that she's had an obsession with guinea pigs and maintained them as pets throughout her life. When Paul had the opportunity to move back to New York City to set up his lab at Rockefeller University, where he had done his PhD, Pat and Paul moved together back to New York in 2015, and Pat joined the staff at Mount Sinai Hospital, where she carried on teaching and training the surgeons of the future. Pat is an international collaborator. She's traveled the globe sharing her passion and expertise for research and patient care. She's been an incredible contributor to SAGES, serving on many committees and initiatives. and she was the 2019 program chair. She's also been a tireless advocate for women in surgery and serving as an outstanding role model in that regard. If one could level any criticism at Pat, it would be her inability to relax, to really, spend some time with her family, have some fun, maybe kick back, let down her hair. You might want to talk to her about that at the party tonight. Pat, of course, is a prolific speaker. She's been on this stage many times before. She was the 2021 Gerald Marx Lecturer. She's well published, has an impressive research, well-funded research program. But just a few words of introduction cannot possibly convey all that is Pat Sylla. And so I'd like to share with you a few words from people who she has touched, if you'll forgive me. Not that one. From a mentor. Pat is highly motivated, principled, incredibly determined, and perseverant. From a former trainee, Pat is a tour de force dedicated to research and improving patient care. And from a grateful patient, people like Pat Sylla change medicine and change the world. And who could possibly argue with that? So invited guests, SAGE's members, I give you your president, Pat Sylla.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. It is an absolute pleasure to be here today and share some thoughts for the next 45 minutes. So the title of my talk is When There Is a Way, There Is a Will. In the words of Dr. John Tarpley, who just 2 weeks ago, in a speech honoring President Stein at the American Surgical Meeting, he said, and I quote, "The world is a mess. We are a mess. There is so much insecurity and instability in this world, but it serves to remind us of how fortunate and privileged we are to be here today, learning from one another." And I want to take a minute to thank our members in the military and members who have gone above and beyond serving our most vulnerable populations and responding to humanitarian crises around the world. It also serves to remind us that as the second largest GI society in North America, serving over 7,500 members around the world, we have a role to play in preparing the surgical workforce for the rapid changes that may threaten the delivery of equitable, affordable, and high-quality care. So for my presidential address, I'm going to highlight several areas where I believe SAGES has the opportunity to make an impact. I retrieved this article published in Times Magazine in 1989 from my father's closet. I was struck by the accuracy of the prediction of an impending climate catastrophe, disproportionately affecting the most vulnerable populations around the world. In the words of the poet Howard Nemerov, Earth's wrath at our assault is slow to come, but relentless when it does. And indeed, climate change has been identified as the biggest global health threat of the 21st century. 2.8 billion people are directly exposed to particulate matter levels higher than 35 units, with a 24% increase in mortality. Among the 7.8 billion people around the world exposed to unsafe levels, 80% live in low and middle income countries. There's been a robust correlation between air quality and infant mortality rates documented across Africa. Healthcare alone is responsible for 8.5% of greenhouse gas emissions in the US, and surgical care accounts for a third of that footprint. A third. In line with the global commitment to reduce emissions 50% by 2030 and to achieve net zero emissions by 2050, SAGES and EAS have joined forces to form a joint sustainability in surgical practice task force to address the environmental impact of our surgical practices. Our strategic plan was revised to incorporate SSP as a key objective with goals to educate our surgeons on this topic, investigate the impact of initiatives on the environment and patient outcome and costs, and disseminate best sustainable practices in collaboration with stakeholders. Over the past year, the committee has been so hard at work. We have surveyed our membership on this topic. We have performed a scoping review of the literature. We have drafted a call of action. All will be published shortly in Surgical Endoscopy. We have already reached out to industry to join in those efforts. We have included content at this annual meeting, and today is the day. We have also set up a webpage for both societies, so please go online to see the websites. And we signed the HHS Health Sector Pledge to reduce emissions. Our survey was sent to SAGES and ES members and their networks on social media and yielded over 1,000 responses. Thank you for that. 55% of respondents were from North America, and we had pretty good representation in terms of surgical specialty and practice settings. We uncovered a major gap in specific knowledge about the environmental footprint of our surgical procedures, including MIS, and the effect of climate change on the health of our patients. But most respondents agreed that OR waste was a problem and did express interest in becoming more sustainable. The majority of our respondents were also willing to change behavior in the OR and to become more sustainable, including switching to reusable gowns and instruments, and even changing their preference cards. Oh my God, imagine that. I couldn't be more proud of the work accomplished by our 31 EAES and SAGES members, 1/3 of which are trainees, medical students, residents, and PhD candidates. Incredible work. SAGES also has a track record of promoting sustainability in teaching basic laparoscopic skills in low and middle income countries, and we have the opportunity to scale those efforts. This is a culmination of the best SAGES has to offer. GLAP curriculum development, combined with SAGES train-the-trainer approach, FLS skills training and testing, and the development of innovative and low-cost simulators. GLAP was designed as a collaborative engagement with local institutions and societies to adapt the GLAP curriculum to the local framework of laparoscopic training so that those sites can effectively implement GLAP and deliver the courses themselves. Since 2020, the GLAP volunteers have already trained over 300 surgeons and 300 trainees across Mexico and Costa Rica. Most importantly, 3 sites along those sites have been able to run GLAP courses completely independently. This has allowed the GLAP team to respond to the growing need for training in Africa in laparoscopy. GLAP launched at the COSEXA meeting in Namibia in 2022, and GLAP deployed in Addis Ababa at the COSEXA meeting last December, with the addition of FLS testing and training, which has been in very high demand. It was by far the most rewarding experience of my presidential year. I have watched closely how the GLAP team worked, how hard they worked, and the profound impact they had at COSEXA. This year, they plan to expand to El Salvador and Uganda, with growth entirely dependent on support from our SAGES Education and Research Foundation and generous contributions from our members like Dr. Pons. So please consider a targeted donation to the Giving Plus campaign to help support those efforts. Another area that deserves some attention is generative AI. It is not entirely clear what that means to surgeons and patients, despite the hype. So we set off to investigate this at SAGES through the creation of the AI task force in 2019. The focus was to investigate how computer vision and machine learning could be applied to surgical video datasets to improve surgical performance and perioperative outcomes. The task force, which includes industry and data scientists, have generated key products that define the standards in surgical video capture, annotation, define a framework whereby surgical video dataset can be used to train algorithms, and most recently, establish principles of data governance. But most importantly, this work stressed the importance of surgeon and surgical teams being part of those collaborative data science efforts and teams to ensure that the work that is derived from this remains focused on patient safety and to improving outcomes. This has led to the SAGES launching its first biomedical challenge, the development of an AI model for intraoperative detection of the critical view of safety. Very SAGES, right? This project has fostered collaboration with industry, medtech, academic partners, and surgeons who have donated videos and helped annotate over 1,400 videos donated from 57 countries. Throughout this project, SAGES has gained expertise on how to manage, store, annotate large video datasets, and this will serve to develop a formal SAGES video annotation curriculum. More to come. The SAGES CVS challenge was accepted at Mackay, which is a big deal, and I'm thrilled to announce that the very first batch of 250 videos annotated will be released as of now. Is there a countdown? Oh, is there a countdown? So please enter the grandchallenge.org if you are interested. There's supposed to be fireworks on this one. But, yeah, there you go. Big deal. SAGES also just launched the SAGES Digital Toolbox, which will help our members navigate digital tools which have the potential to enhance our personal and professional lives. Lastly, I want to highlight the work of our Guidelines Committee is doing regarding surgical decision-making provided by these large language models, linked chatbots. This work was published just 2 days ago in Surgical Endoscopy and showed significant discordance in some of the recommendations regarding the management of GERD between some of those large language models and SAGES guidelines when queried by surgeons and patients. This trend is important to monitor as we seek to protect our patients from general global misinformation. Recent negative media coverage questioning the appropriateness of and training in complex hernia repair has hit a nerve within our general surgery community this year. But it emphasizes a need for us to build and maintain public trust in surgical care, and emphasizes a need for us to build and maintain public trust. And we recently initiated a patient engagement task force that will define how SAGES will incorporate into our committees the patient voice in all our educational products and increase their relevance and impact so we can become a trusted source of information. Very excited by this initiative. And because we're a data-driven patient safety organization, I am also thrilled to announce the recent launch of the RDN, the Research Data Network, from our research committee. This will allow our members to participate in clinical trials and which will promote research engagement and recruitment of diverse clinical trial sites as well as patients. As of 8 o'clock this morning, we have 91 institutions that registered. So please take the QR code and enter your information so you can participate in this effort. Lastly, regardless of where you stand with respect to the recent SCOTUS decision regarding affirmative action, this decision complicates our efforts to increase the representation of underrepresented minorities in surgery. SAGES, like many other organizations, is committed to promoting the recruitment of a diverse surgical workforce and reduce health inequities in surgical care. Every specialty surgical meeting that I have attended this year has emphasized the persistent trends of underrepresentation of Black surgical faculty over the past 15 years, which has remained a flat 4%. With lower rates of promotion and higher attrition rates, particularly among Black female faculty. Other reports have highlighted disparities in perceived mentorship among Black surgical trainees and persistently higher rate of dismissal and attrition in that group in particular. Much work has been done to uncover factors that contribute to this trend, including what I would call opportunity disparity, the lack of role models, support, mentorship, exclusion, and overt discrimination. The big question is, what are we going to do about it? This is one of the most exciting high school to undergrad pathway program called the Doctors of Tomorrow that was presented at SBAS this year that was hosted by the University of Michigan, where medical students are paired with high school students from the 9th to the 12th grade and throughout college with early access to learning opportunities, longitudinal mentorship. And that program can be supplemented with a pre-med enrichment program like the Hope Scholars Experience. Very impressive effort. The ACS. The ACS has developed a comprehensive DEI toolkit that was deployed this year. Congratulations. It provided also funding for innovative DEI projects. SAGES was a lucky recipient of an award to create the fundamentals of leadership development to help develop leadership with a DEI perspective. This course was already attended by 79 of our members last year and another 38 participants just this past Monday here in Cleveland. Lastly, I want to point out the work from other organizations like JSS, the Japanese Society of Endoscopic Surgery, that addressed how to increase female representation among surgeons, and where our very own Sally Matthews was invited to share the North American experience. At COSEXA, the College of East, Central, and Southern Africa, the gender gap in the surgical workforce is astounding. Across 14 member societies, you have a 9-to-1 ratio of male to female orthopedic and general surgeons, in part due to opportunity disparities for girls lacking access to primary education. Understanding the obstacles that we're confronting in the US may not apply elsewhere. So it is essential to learn from one another to support global DEI efforts. This was a big focus at this year's Women in Surgery meeting chaired by Sharona Ross, where we heard from women around the world, women leaders. We had the chance to learn from Dr. Agneta Odera in particular, who's a double board-certified cardiothoracic and pediatric surgeon, and her incredible journey overcoming unbelievable obstacles to achieve her dream, and is now making a significant impact in rural Kenya as the only surgeon in the region managing complex pediatric and cardiac malformations. Many of our own current Black leaders in surgery have had to overcome opportunity disparities. And in that sense, this past year was a year like no other, with more Black chairs, division chiefs, and society leaders than ever before. Their talents, accomplishment, and vision for the future were acknowledged, rewarded, and embraced. This matters more than ever as we struggle to grow the pool of URM surgeon leaders who will in turn influence, advocate, and inspire to lead the change. When our departments, divisions, CEOs, CMOs, CSOs start looking like this, it tells our high school's girls and boys, our medical students and our residents that yes, indeed, when there's a way, there might be a will. To paraphrase Steve Stein's presidential address, it is not lost on me that I am the first Black female president of SAGES. But I want to honor the memory of late Dr. Ford, who co-founded SAGES with Dr. Jerry Marks in 1981. You know the history, served as second SAGES president. He was many things to many of you, but to me, he was a mentor, a teacher, a role model. He's the reason I went to train at Columbia Presbyterian Hospital under his watchful eye, and I got to know him and his beloved wife, Kay. In reflecting on our path to the SAGES presidency, I want to present two stories of success. The story of Dr. Ford, who overcame opportunity disparity, prejudice, and racism by counting with resilience, unwavering optimism, and superior emotional intelligence, gaining the respect, trust, and influence through his intellect and legendary diplomatic skills. But I also want to present a contrasting story of success at the same historically charged time. The story of my father, who also overcame opportunity disparity, but did so through a pipeline or pathway program, as we call it now, that can serve as a model for future pathway programs intended to diversify the surgical workforce. It is hard to believe that it's already been 5 years since Dr. Ford passed away, just 2 months after we celebrated him at SAGES in 2019 and celebrated the release of his Icon in Surgery video. Dr. Ford was born in New York to immigrants from Barbados. He was sent back to Barbados for education at the age of 4. He then came back to New York City and entered City College, where he was pre-med. He actually worked as an orderly at New York Hospital Cornell, where he experienced racism in the most visceral way. He was expelled from the OR by the surgeon because of his race. He was deterred from applying to Columbia Medical School because of his race, but applied anyways and was accepted. He did experience discrimination in student dorms, forcing him to live off campus. He met Kay in medical school. Of course, they fell in love. She was a nurse, midwife, and at another hospital, and they got married in his second year of medical school. He aspired to complete his general surgery residency at the prestigious St. Luke's Hospital, which is part of Columbia, but was not offered an interview. He trained at Bellevue instead. His residency was marked by incidents when some patients would simply refuse to be seen by a Black surgeon. He spent 2 years in the army in Germany, and upon his return, he was not able to come back to Columbia. So he went to St. Vincent's instead, where he did struggle to grow his practice. One of Dr. Ford's mentors during his residency was Dr. Voorhees, a vascular surgeon and innovator whose claim to fame was to have developed the first prototype of a cloth vascular prosthesis that was later refined and implanted as the first synthetic graft in humans at Columbia in 1953. Dr. Voorhees encouraged Dr. Ford to explore the role of flexible endoscopy, which had been developed just a few years prior. Dr. Ford was finally able to join the faculty at Columbia, but he was required to have his surgery supervised by some of his colleagues. While at Columbia, Dr. Ford recognized early the transformative potential of endoscopy and the role that it would play in screening of colorectal cancer and avoiding surgical resection. He embarked on evaluating endoscopy for the removal of polyps and soon started advocating for access and training of surgeons in endoscopy. But he encountered significant resistance, if not flat-out hostility, with backlash from both surgeons and gastroenterologists, as well as from surgical and GI societies, that in addition to these difficulties, he had a really hard time building his practice. When Kenny met Jerry, when Ken Ford met Jerry Marks, this fateful meeting in 1970 at an AESGE meeting ignited the wider fight for making GI endoscopy an integral part of surgery. Dr. Ford and Marks became close friends and escalated efforts for surgical endoscopy to gain the acceptance that it deserved within surgical societies. The continued virulent opposition they faced led to the founding of SAGES in 1981, followed by the launch of surgical endoscopy, for which Ken Ford served as editor for 10 years. Ken Ford was well known for being the architect of these developments during these turbulent times. Dr. Ford's legacy in disseminating surgical endoscopy is immeasurable and culminated with Katie Couric's televised colonoscopy in 2000, leading to an unprecedented national increase in screening colonoscopy. I was privileged to perform Dr. Ford's very last surgical case before he retired in 2006. You may have to ask me or pay me to tell me what procedure we did together. And he transitioned to a more administrative role, spending more time with Kay, to whom he was married for 60 years. After retiring, Dr. Ford spent much time teaching and advocating for minority students and faculty at Columbia, establishing the KAF Diversity Alliance to promote networking, foster mentorship, and diversity across this organization. Now, onto my second story. In 1959, as Dr. Ford was graduating from Columbia Medical School in New York City, a young, exceptionally talented 14-year-old, Abu Sylla, was mapping out his future. He was still grieving the death of his father, a proud Muslim merchant in a small agricultural town in Mans, in the west of Côte d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast, West Africa. He left 12 children behind and 4 wives. To give you some context, 1959, Ivory Coast was one of 45 African countries still under colonial power. Côte d'Ivoire was colonized by the French from 1893 until 1960. 1960. Although slavery was abolished in 1908, the country was under assimilation rules where the population had no political rights and were imposed work drafts in plantations and mines. After World War II, political reform occurred with the rights of Ivorians to finally organize politically and elimination of forced labor. Félix Houphouët-Boigny rose through the ranks of the African Farmers Union, eventually becoming the country's representative to the French government, advocating for improved work conditions for African farmers, and eventually led the country to independence in 1960, with his election as first president. Abu was a recipient of a scholarship to attend the best secondary school in Abidjan, the main city in Côte d'Ivoire. In his senior year in 1963, he was approached by recruiters from the African Scholarship Program of American University, ASPO. And he was selected as one of 5 Ivorians, top 5%, and one of 265 African students from 21 countries to receive this prestigious fellowship. ASPO was the first and largest American scholarship program for African students that awarded scholarships to nearly 1,600 students from 34 countries in Africa between 1961 and 1971. This scholarship, like several others offered by other countries like France, the UK, the USSR, were intended to train African elites to help build the newly independent African countries. These scholarships were partially funded by the USAID, largely driven by a strong interest in increasing US influence onto newly formed African governments. Clearly. ASPO founder was David Henry. He was the director of admissions at Harvard in 1960, and he was committed to expanding access to educational resources for Africa's newly independent nations. The program was funded by philanthropy, USAID, and African governments themselves. Through these networks, David Henry was able to enlist 236 American universities, 236 universities, who committed to this program and provided free college tuition to these African students. Local selection were set up pretty much almost every participating country. Selection was brutal. It was rigorous, based on composite scores derived from school grades, special scholastic aptitude tests or baccalaureate for Francophone students, teacher ratings, and interview ratings. Interestingly, and quite progressive for the time, the composite score were adjusted by gender, taking into account the possibility of lower aptitude test scores reflecting women having less access to educational opportunities compared to their male counterparts in some African countries. As a result of the rigorous selection process, only 3% of applicants were awarded a scholarship. The ASPO program arranged for several weeks of homestay at one of 2 locations, either Putney in Vermont, or Atlanta, where ASPO grantees were matched with hosting families. These homestays included intensive English training that were intended to build confidence, foster community among ASPO grantees, and learn about cultural and educational differences from their home countries. Meanwhile, Abu was assigned to Colby College in Waterville, Maine, as part of the third wave of ASPO scholarships. He was matched with George and Laura Heller in Putney as his homestay hosts. They were graduates from Harvard and Radcliffe who moved to a farm in Putney after graduation to raise livestock and poultry and raise their 3 children. Laura was a teacher, George developed a construction business, and Abu and the Hellers entirely bonded. They became very close, became sort of adoptive family, especially when Abu lost his mother the following year. Abu started at Colby College in 1963. He was one of 6 Africans on campus and one of 2 ASPO grantees. As a reminder of the context in the 1960s was the epicenter of the fight for civil rights, leading to the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Acts in 1965. As Abu was starting college in Colby College in 1963, the fight for the right for higher education in the segregated South was raging. As was the case with Vivian Malone and James Hood, who were the first Black students to enroll at the University of Alabama, leading to the infamous episode Stand in a Schoolhouse Door, the attempt to block them from entering the school. 1963 also marks another milestone, first 5 Black students integrating Duke's University. At some American universities, ASPO students faced hostile social backlash. There's a report from documenting the experience of Black students at Northwestern in the 60s and 70s, where they talk about making me feel like guests instead of an integral part of the campus. Some students experienced racial discrimination, excluded from pledging to fraternities. In other cases, white students would refuse to accept Black roommates. Black students also experienced significant difficulties with interracial dating, which was informally discouraged. At Colby College, Abu thrived. He joined the soccer team, became a star, proved to be the most useful member in the school article, leading them to several championships, victories. He joined the Pi Lambda Phi fraternity, and in the summer, he taught French to Peace Corps volunteers being deployed to Francophone African countries. This is where he met Danielle Marie-France, a young French-American Peace Corps instructor who came to visit him regularly at Colby when they started dating. Among the many letters that Abu sent Laura, and that I had a chance to recover years later, I want to point out a couple of things. He describes his positive experience integrating the school, the friendliness of his fraternity brother, the support he benefited from other students, ASPO students, and some of them had arranged for him to get housing in the fraternity house, so he didn't have to seek housing elsewhere. And the supportive community created by the ASPO students and all the other students on campus. Ultimately, Abu completed his degree requirement in less than 3 years, graduating with a BA in economics and political science, ranking 3rd among 157 classmates, elected Phi Beta Kappa and one of 8 Bixler scholars. His trajectory of success was not unique, as reflected by the ASPO program final report released in 1975. 91% of grantees graduated with a bachelor degree. 71% took advantage of enrichment programs sponsored by the ASPO program, and more than 60% pursued advanced degrees. There was only a 9% rate of withdrawal from the program, mostly driven by family circumstances and illness. By December 1975, 64% of ASPO graduates returned to their original home country, with the rate of return as high as 80% across 15 countries, including Côte d'Ivoire. So what were the ingredients for success of the ASPO program? The highly selective process ensured academic excellence. Rigorous interviews ensured the candidates were highly motivated and ambitious. The cost of the program was relatively low, given the cost sharing with philanthropic organizations and American universities. The US and African government ultimately achieved their goals, which ensured sustainability of the program for those 10 years that the program was running, until African countries could develop their own infrastructure for higher education. Most importantly, all stakeholders had skin in the game, and they were fully invested in ensuring the success of those grantees. After graduating, Abu completed a master's in economics at Michigan State, and Abu and Danielle got married in 1968. He was recruited to IBM as a financial analyst and later as a commercial engineer, worked in New York, and then in Paris. This is where he probably experienced the most difficulties with racism, in France. He eventually returned home and joined IBM branch in Abidjan, which was mostly run by French expats. Returning home to his traditional Muslim family was not without its own challenges. As he returned married to a white French Catholic woman, raising biracial children, gaining acceptance was nothing short of challenging. He became the first African director of an IBM branch in Africa and led the full integration of the company by local Ivorian talent. The other Ivorian ASPO awardees who graduated from American universities also went on to become prominent government leaders, private business leaders, etc., etc. We were raised in Côte d'Ivoire, and we had the privilege to have the opportunity to come study in the United States. Abu was very much like Dr. Ford. In personality, he was the most diplomatic, cool-tempered person I know. I did not inherit that from him. I got the fiery from my mom. And like Dr. Ford, Abu always took the high road when faced with adversity, primarily because the stakes were often too high in those days. He always remained focused on the end goal. Paul and I were very fortunate to have both Ken and Kay Ford and George and Laura Heller with us to celebrate our wedding. George and Laura remained very close friends until their death. I wanted to highlight both stories that speak of the resilience required to withstand systemic biases, racism, and exclusion that our underrepresented minority trainees too often face in programs. But my father's story also highlights the potential impact of thoughtfully constructed pathway programs designed to ensure success by engaging diverse stakeholders. The ASPO model is intriguing in that you can think of a similar partnership between stakeholders like Department of Surgery, societies, local high school, colleges, HBCUs, and medical schools. The Hellers serve as a model for dedicated mentors with a strong connection to the trainee, which ensures the longevity of the mentoring relationships. The key ingredients that must be baked into the program also include experiences and activities that sustain the trainee's interest, builds their confidence and skills. Lastly, funding sources must be diversified to include additional sources like industry, foundations, and philanthropy. The current leaky pipeline pathway program for URMs in surgery should be reimagined. With early exposure to role models, engagement of mentors who are invested, it must integrate homestay equivalent with situational and cultural preparedness, community building, and a support network. Supplemented with enrichment programs, and progress must be tracked, including paying close attention to advancement and retention. And finally, we must cultivate a culture of paying it forward. Until such pathway programs can be deployed, we as societies need to continue the work of raising awareness, addressing our blind spots, increasing efforts in recruitment, mentorship, sponsorship, and support of our most vulnerable trainees. Building these pathways will require investment by various stakeholders who must share the vision of diversifying the surgical workforce to reduce health inequities. Like ASPO, these pathways will require faith in the process, patience, a lot of patience, and it will take time to demonstrate results. Dr. K. Mary King keynote lecture from 2 years ago at SAGES spoke about the critical importance of belonging, sponsorship, mentorship, support, compassion for success. I have had the privilege of benefiting from all of the above on my own path to the SAGES presidency. I am most grateful to Randolph Steinhagen, who's here today, my surgical sub-I preceptor at Sinai when I was a medical student, my very first mentor. He protected me after a derogatory comment was made in one of my letters of recommendations when I was applying for colorectal fellowship. That could have cost me the match. He took me under his wing and he pushed me forward. Since then, I've had the privilege of having impactful mentors like David Ratner, my very first SAGES mentor, and through him I gained access to the SAGES family, network, opportunities at a very early stage in my notes career, which led to cascading of opportunities, mentors, sponsors. I want to thank my SAGES Hellers and the many more behind the scenes who have supported me. I want to thank my super Hellers, my amazing, talented female mentors and sponsors, particularly Rory Pryor, Leanne Feldman, Pat Turner, but also all the women who have supported me, inspired me to be the best I could be in paying it forward, growing our young talent. I want to thank my MGH family for setting me up for success early in my academic career. I am so grateful to my colorectal surgery family at Sinai, and especially my colorectal crew, who have had my back all year, and my rockstar research team, the amazing work they've done. I am particularly grateful to be part of a department that has been deeply engaged in global surgery, and I am so inspired every day by the work that my chair, Dr. Michael Marion, who's here today, Dan Heron, Linda Zhang, Dr. Joseph are doing in Uganda, empowering surgeons locally to adopt and implement endoscopy and laparoscopy skills under low cost and sustainable solutions, including telementoring. I am thankful for the honor of having served as your president this past year, but I have never felt more confident and hopeful about this organization's ability to lead, support, train, and inspire the next generation of diverse surgical leaders. I want to thank the Exec Council for their leadership and incredible support throughout this tumultuous year. And I want to thank our SAGES committee chairs in particular for moving this organization forward through the incredible amount of work that they've done. I have asked the impossible of the program chairs this year. I asked them to deliver the best content in terms of innovation, latest technique and technologies, but I've also challenged them with thinking about sustainability and patient voice, and the results has been extraordinary. So I want to personally thank the three co-chairs this year, Marilise Boutros, Caitlin Halbert, and Eric Polai for their vision and efforts, as well as the PTPT committee for putting together a fabulous program. Thank you. Oh, hopefully the musical performance tonight will be in line with my high expectation. This work could not have happened without the 32 BSc staff that support our 42 committees and task force, and I am eternally grateful for all that they bring to the table. Thank you. And of course, I'm incredibly grateful to the dream team, Sally, Shelley, Linda, for all the work, passion, and excellence, supporting SAGES, supporting me. We celebrate this year 40 years of partnership between SAGES and BSc, and I look forward to more than 40 years more. Thank you, guys. Yeah, Paul, there's no way I would have done any of this without you. He's my rock, my strength, my absolute everything. Thank you, Paul. I am blessed to have two healthy boys, strong personalities, just like Mama. I want to thank Jonah and Ariel for keeping me honest all these years. And I can tell you there now I can describe to you every step of a transitional TME to perfection. Very proud, very proud. You have been great sport this year. We have had some great times over the past 2 years, especially in our travels, connecting with Paul's extended family in South Africa and with my own extended family in Côte d'Ivoire. But we've had a lot of loss as well. After Abu passed away 3 years ago, we also unfortunately lost Dr. Ian Thomas Cohen, Paul's father, who passed away just 5 months ago. Tom was an exceptional pediatric surgeon, practiced for over 50 years. We miss them both terribly today, but we know they would be incredibly proud. Thank you, SAGES.
Allez, viens,